Hello, and welcome to the Tucson Astrologers Guild December 13, 2025 presentation. My name is Gael Chilson, and I'd like to present our first speaker who's going to be talking about what's coming up in 2026. Let's put our hands together and welcome Susie Cox.
Hi, everybody. Hi, and hi, my Zoomies. This is so great. So welcome. And I just want to say 2026 is going to be a wild year. Just saying, right off the bat. Yeah, so let's just jump right into it. Okay, so here's a chart for New Year's Day. So I just wanted to say that just to make it easy, I use a zero Aries rising, so I don't have to deal with the rising sign. And I just want to kind of go through this chart just a little bit so everybody can kind of see what's happening here. So it's a picture of where the planets were in the sky when right now, and basically, and this is where all the planets are. And the planets represent archetypes, like Mars is male and Venus is female. I'm going to give some basics here. The signs are the personalities, and then the houses are, of course, the areas where it comes out. So this is a mandala, or a picture of where the planets were in the sky, or right now, and then in the middle is the geometry between the planets. So I color code these and I make them easier to read. So red lines are challenges or hard angles, or kind of what we want to change. The blue lines, trines, talents and gifts and things that we're really good at. And just a little astronomy. Once we jump into charts, we're not going to be doing this. So the Earth is in the center. This is the horizon of the Earth. And these are the planets above the horizon, and these are the planets below the horizon. So over here, where the little arrow points to, is the eastern horizon, and everything rises in the east. So what happens on the day, really every day, sunrise, noonday sun, sunset, midnight, back up to sunrise. Oops. Sorry about that. And so this is where the planets are right now, and basically how the geometry between them. And okay, now kind of the important things that are happening, and I'm going to be talking about it later, is one, I think is fascinating. This is the year it's starting off. Here's the sun in Capricorn, and on the right side, one side is Venus, and the other side is Mars. So it's fascinating that the year is beginning with Mars, Venus flanking the sun. So, Mars is stress, and there's a little bit of stress in the world. I'm not even going to go there. Venus, luckily, will balance it out, and they're traveling together for a while. So it's a very interesting way to start out the new year. So that's one thing. I've circled them in yellow. When planets are circled in yellow, they're conjunctions. So just to kind of let them stand out a little bit. The other really big thing that's happening this year is Neptune and Saturn are conjuncting. And they've retrograded back into Pisces, and they're going to be going into Aries, which is a really big deal. They join together once every, Neptune's got 165-year orbit, Saturn has a 30-year orbit. They join together once every 36 years. But what's such a big thing now is they're joining in 0 degrees Aries. I mean, that's the beginning of everything, the beginning of the zodiac, the beginning of spring. I mean, it's huge. And I'd write newsletters, and this next newsletter, I'm going to be writing an article on Neptune and Saturn conjunct. And the history is amazing. I mean, really, so I went all the way back and found out when they were at 0 Aries. So there were a lot of Aries, several different Aries, but 0 Aries, I'm going to kind of keep it for my newsletter, but oh my gosh, it's so interesting to see the phase that we're in right now. So that's a really big deal. The other thing thing that's happening is Pluto is trining Uranus. So Pluto's just gone into Aquarius. It's a really big deal, kind of the beginning of the Aquarian age. And then Uranus is just getting ready to go into Gemini, which is, speaking our mind. And that's going to make a big change in the world when that happens. Now, this trine is going to be happening from 2024 to 2029, depending on the orb. So we're going to be having this trine for a long time. And the other planets will come and go, but that trine is going to stay there. So I think that's just fascinating. And it really is, I've called Pluto, we the people. Uranus is we the people that have a voice. So this is really going to be, people are going to be speaking their mind much stronger than they are now. And a couple of trines. Another thing that's a really big thing that's happening this year is Jupiter. Jupiter is going to be trining Saturn and trining Neptune. It's doing a little retrograde, so it's going to trine them. And then when it goes forward, it's going to be opposing Pluto, which that's going to be an amazing one that's going to happen. So Jupiter is doing a whole thing this year, up until the spring or the summer. So anyway, that's just kind of an overall picture of what's going on. Okay, overview. So what I'm going to be talking about is planetary alignments, what the planets are doing, Chinese New Year, which is a really cool thing that's happening this year too, retrogrades, Mercury and Venus. Mars is not retrograding this year. The moon's nodes are changing signs, eclipses, visible planets, ingresses, and ingress is when a planet goes into a new sign, the past and the future. So that's what I'm going to be covering here. And one thing I wanted to mention is that, except for the charts that I'm going to be showing, which are solar fire, but every single one of my images are AI generated. I'm big into AI right now, like big time. So at any rate, you just go, create an image of the north and south nodes of the moon, or I did a circle with a triangle in it with some geometry. So at any rate, it's all AI, all the images are AI, which I really love. So the planetary alignments, Pluto trine Uranus, we just talked about. Saturn conjunct Neptune, we mentioned too. Jupiter trine Saturn and Neptune, and then Jupiter opposed Pluto. So those are kind of the main things that are happening this year. Okay. Now, Pluto trine Uranus. Now, this has been happening for a while, so these are the dates. These are the dates that they trine each other, then they'll go out of orb and they'll trine each other. So it's really from 2024 to 2029. So we got 4 or 5 years, depending on the orb that you use, for this trine to happen. And sure enough, and here we have Pluto trine Uranus. So this will be Pluto trine Uranus. Now, everything else will change a little bit, but that's really the one of the most important ones. So anyway, so that is Pluto trine Uranus. It'll be off and on. And that's one of the bigger transits that we're going to have. Why is it big? Well, one, Pluto has a 248-year orbit, Uranus 84-year orbit, so it doesn't happen very often. The other thing is they're changing signs. That's what makes it so important. Pluto is 1 degree Aquarius or 2 degrees. Uranus is just going into Gemini. So they're going in and out of signs as they're trying each other, which is just fascinating. So it's a very, very unusual aspect that's been happening. Okay. All right. So Saturn conjunct Neptune. So they conjunct on February 20th, 2026 at 0 degrees, 44 minutes, 0 degrees, right? And it's not only Saturn conjunct Neptune. Now that's a fascinating one, where Neptune is, spirituality. Neptune is kind of like having our head in the clouds. Saturn is having our feet firmly rooted in the ground. So it's almost like what I'm saying is accomplishing our dreams. I was like, what are our dreams? And Saturn's like, well, let's get it done. So now Saturn, of course, relates to government and business. Neptune is about healing and spirituality. So I'm calling them the odd couple. Saturn and Neptune really don't know each other that well. They don't like each other that well, I don't think, where Saturn's like, well, let's get something done. And Neptune's like, what'd you say? What do you want to do? I don't know. We'll see. So it really is, it's an odd combination. I call them the odd couple. And, but 0 Aries, they're going to be moving forward. So that's a really, really big transit that's happening for everybody. And the other thing that's coming up here, which is so interesting, you notice the configuration of planets. I mean, it was like they're having a big old party, a big old party on one part of the chart. So there are a whole bunch of planets in Pisces, and Saturn and Neptune have gone into Aries. But you see how this dominates the whole sky. All the rest of the chart, except for Uranus and Jupiter, they're all empty. All the planets are in one spot. And they will be for months as they're going through Pisces and they're going through Aries. They went to Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries. So it's a really big grouping of planets that are there at the same time, which is also very rare. Yep. Okay. Jupiter trine Neptune. So here's Jupiter, Jupiter's over here. Trine, now you can see this is in July 20th. And so this is an interesting one. Jupiter's trining Neptune. And so, Jupiter is, expansive. Jupiter says, I want to try new things. Plus, and do things in a big way. Plus, it's in the sign of Cancer. Jupiter loves being in Cancer. It's like community coming together. And it really is community coming together in the world right now. So here we have this, Jupiter trining. Now, Jupiter's at this time has gone into Leo, trining Neptune. But it's fascinating because on the same day, July 20th, yeah, Jupiter is also opposing Pluto. So so Jupiter is lining up with both of those planets exactly on the same day, which is really rare. So Jupiter trine Neptune, it was like, okay, if this is society and humanity, Neptune, we wanting to heal society and humanity. Pluto, transformation and change. So it's really going to be a sense of, and this is going to be happening before then, when the transits happen, they've already started before. It's not like, oh, July 20th, something's going to begin. It's already happening, building up. But that's a big one. I'm thrilled to see Neptune and Pluto kind of balancing each other, because Neptune is more healing. Pluto is like tough and transformation. So I'm hoping that they're going to kind of create a balance with each other. So, but that's fascinating that that's happening exactly on the same day, which does not happen very often. So those are the two big things that are happening in the summer, July 20th, and opposing Pluto. It's going to be a big one. And then after that, Jupiter trines Saturn, because you see Saturn's move forward. Now Jupiter is going to be trining Saturn. And Jupiter trine Saturn is like, Jupiter says, hey, I want to do this. And Saturn's like, let's get it done. So I'm thinking that July, kind of going up through the summer, is going to be kind of full of turmoil. And then hopefully kind of towards the end, when Saturn kicks in, it was like, oh, good. Okay, now there's a structure. Now let's get things done. We'll have to see. But it's pretty wonderful, just like looking at thank goodness for astrology. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed, without a doubt. And things are kind of weird in the world right now. So if you can look at astrology and say, oh, well, this is where it's headed, it lifts my spirits more than I can tell and more than I can say. So any rate, okay. Now, any questions before we move on? Yes. Here. So anybody that has a question, you can ask the mic, and then my Zoomies will be able to hear the mic.
So you can put this off till later if you like. I was curious how 3i Atlas figures into all of this, because it's been really deliberate in its passing. Like the 19th will be the closest to the Earth.
Yeah. I'm not even going to go there.
Okay.
Interstellar comet that's just kind of coming right through, and I'm sure it's powerful, but it's out of the range of astrology. So I'm not going to address that. Good question, though. Yeah, are you going to talk about that more? Good. Gail, I'm kind of meat and potatoes astrology. Gail will go into some more esoterics.
I just wanted to say that Rudolf Steiner, who was a very well-known scholar and clairvoyant, when it came to Halley's Comet, he said whenever it returns in proximity to the Earth, it causes the Earth to be materialistic. So it's possible that all comets have an effect, and that effect might vary from one comet to the other. And who knows what this one's going to do to us. Yes.
But thank you, Frank. Thank you, Tom. Okay. Should we move on? Hey, once again, this is AI generated. I said, create an image for the fire horse, for the Chinese New Year. And isn't this a fantastic image? I just completely love it. Yeah. I'm kind of in love with AI, just saying. Okay, now Chinese New Year. Yeah, so Fire Horse starts on February 17th, 2026. And the horse, is intelligent, witty, charming, kind of thrill seeker, resourceful. And so it's kind of like, it shows this energy. And that's just the horse, high energy. And willful. He's pretty strong. Now, throw the fire in. That's just a regular horse. Throw the fire. Fire is more high energy, which I think is fascinating with these planets in Aries going in with a fire horse. I mean, it's all part of the same thing. That's when I said this is going to be a wild year, guys. It really will, because we got a lot of Aries fire moving forward after having a lot of Pisces, what I call being in the sludge. It was like, what needs to let go of? And we're in the sludge now, right? So, but once we move forward, boy, this is going to be going really fast. Now, the horse challenge side is volatile, argumentative, forced through sheer willpower. So there is like a sense of, a drivenness, about the horse. What I'm saying is like, all these planets in Aries moving forward, it was like jumping on, a fire horse, and then, like harnessing a fire horse moving through the year. So I think people need to go fast, do things fast. This is, because it's going to be happening fast. So, plan on what you want to do and really have a good plan and just go for it. Yeah, because slowness is not going to happen once this really kicks in. So, yeah. Okay. Fire horse. Are any horses here? No, no horses. Yeah. Sean Kelly, my good friend's a fire horse. Yeah, so he's going to be doing this year. Hi, Sean. Yeah, okay. All right. Retrogrades. Okay, Mercury retrograde. Now, once again, this was, an image, that I said create an image of, a person making a decision. Right? And here they came up, future and growth, past and familiar. Actually, he's trying to figure out which one to go, right? Where to go. So Mercury retrogrades. So these are the times that are retrogrades. Mercury retrogrades 3 times a year, three weeks each time, pretty much. And what I think is interesting is this year they're all retrograding in water signs. Here we have this February to March in Pisces, June through July in Cancer, October through November in Scorpio. So they're all in water signs. So it feels like an emotional year, or kind of having a sense of, how we're feeling inside, to be able to move forward. And of course, retrogrades get such a bad rap. If people know nothing about astrology, they know Mercury retrograde, right? And I really like to use astrology in a positive way. So the retrograde is regrouping, redoing things. And so it's a perfect time to clean out closets, and to let things go and to, change things. So what I like to do is organize it according to the sign. So Pisces. So, Pisces would be, cleaning out your emotions, letting your emotions go, and, kind of how you're feeling just in general, and understanding how other people are feeling too. In June, the sign of Cancer. Cancer would be great for planting and being outside. Cancer, I think, is the kitchen, which would be good, with a perfect Mercury retrograde thing and the sign of Cancer. Clean out your kitchen cabinets, get rid of things, and just move the pots and pans around, or, clean things out. And then, you okay, dear? Then October, November goes into Scorpio. And Scorpio is more bedroom or bathroom, I would say, as far as the parts of the house that it rules. So it'd be good to kind of clean that part of the house out. And so, my feeling about Mercury retrogrades is find something to do during the Mercury retrograde, rather than just complaining or, noticing all the things that you think are wrong. Was like, over these next 3 weeks, I'm going to clean out my kitchen. And then you clean out your kitchen, you're like, oh, I felt so good. And then you use the Mercury retrograde in a positive way. I'm a positive astrologer, so we might as well use everything in a positive way. Okay? All right. Venus retrograde. Create an image of a woman who's making decisions about her love life. Pretty cool. So Venus retrograde. So Venus retrogrades October 4th through November 13th. And retrogrades into Scorpio, and it goes back into Libra, and so it's kind of interesting because Venus retrogrades about overlaps Mercury retrograde. So there's a time when both Venus and Mercury are going to be retrograde in Scorpio together. It's like scandals are going to be coming out in the world. I mean, we got scandals that are happening now. Believe me, this is going to be more scandals and juicy. And I'm saying this is going to be a juicy time. Yeah, so you don't usually get two of them that are retrograding at the same time. And yeah, so anyway, Venus and Mercury retrograde at the same time, which will be pretty interesting. Yeah. And the moon's nodes change signs. Now, what I completely see if I can move. Can I move this, Tom? Yeah, good. All right. So create an image of the north and south nodes of the moon. Is this image fantastic? I mean, so the cool thing about AI, they know what the nodes are. They know, AI, at least the AI go through Copilot mostly, ChatGPT a little bit, but mostly Copilot. But, they know astrology pretty well. So it's like create an image and look at this. Of course, this over here is the north node. And how am I interpreting this, right? It's so cool, AI comes out, and how do you interpret this? So to me, this is a north node, and over here is the south node, the smaller one. But look at their eyes are closed. So it's almost like they're intuitively vibing in with each other. Now, what are the nodes? The nodes are in, 2 points in space and that are intersecting point between the path of the sun and the path of the moon. And when the sun and the moon and the nodes line up, there's an eclipse. So they're eclipse points, right? So I completely love this image as far as they're kind of looking at each other, but they're not looking at each other. But they're both kind of part of the same picture. So and the nodes are kind of like, it almost feels like there's like a subtle vibration in the background. No, it's like the whole society changes according to what the signs are in. And on a personal level, like in our chart, it's what we've done in past lives, or like our past life themes, right? And so anyway, we're going from Virgo and Pisces to Leo and Aquarius. Huge change. So Virgo and Pisces, if Virgo is like, I'm trying to figure out how to do it. And Pisces is like, I'm not sure, I'm a little confused. And Pisces can be the vulnerable, or, helping people that need help. But it's more vulnerability, kind of sensitivity. Leo and Aquarius, totally different. Leo's the boss. Aquarius doesn't really care. Aquarius is like, let's just make changes. So there's going to be this sense of a drivenness and a more power that people are going to have. And now this comes in July, July and through March 2028. They're in a sign. The nodes are in a sign for a year and a half. And but there's going to be a big shift. And of course, everybody can check their charts, and see where the nodes are changing in their charts too. But there's going to be a big shift. People are going to feel much stronger, much more deliberate, much more confident. Pisces, well, I'm not sure. Leo's like, hey. So it's going to be a whole different energy in the whole world, right? So South Node in Leo, North Node in Aquarius. North Node destiny. Aquarius is change. South Node, unfinished business from past lives. Leo is like bringing up your own confidence so you can make change in the world. But I completely adore this image. It's just, and I really just looked at it quite a bit just to think of, how can the nodes connect with each other? But they're just points in space. They're not planets. There's nothing there. They're just points in space. So it's almost like they're there to just kind of understand each other, but not really, a planet or anything. So is this a cool image or what? I mean, isn't that fantastic? Am I the only one that's totally in love with this image? I think it's fantastic. Yeah. So any rate, so that's the nodes. Okay. Eclipses. So we have 2 eclipse seasons a year. So a solar, a lunar, solar, a lunar, 2 weeks apart from each other, 6 months apart from each other, so two eclipses here and 2 eclipses here. So solar February 17th, lunar March 3rd, solar August 12th, and a lunar August 28th. And once again, these are all AI generated images too. Annular eclipse on February 17th, which means the moon's a little bit too far away from the Earth, so it creates a ring of fire, so it doesn't really block the whole sun. So February 17th, 28 degrees Aquarius. It's only seen in Antarctica. Annular. Total lunar eclipse, March 3rd, 12 degrees Virgo. You can see it in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Lunar eclipses are really cool too. I love lunar. I love just all eclipses. It's just so cool to see how the planets start, move with each other. Here's the Earth and then the sun and the moon, and they're doing like this little dance with each other. I just completely love them. Yeah. Okay. Total solar eclipse, August 12th, 2026, 20 Leo, Greenland, Iceland, and Spain. And it goes just a little bit north of Barcelona. I used to live in Barcelona. I'm going to be watching the solar eclipse from Barcelona with some friends in August. And this one is a cool eclipse because this whole lineup of planets that you could see, once the sun goes dark, you can see all the planets. This is going to be like, oh my God, all the planets are right next to the sun once it goes dark. So yeah, so I'm going to be experiencing that one from Spain. Yeah. And partial lunar eclipse, August 28th, by Pisces, China, Russia, and Australia. So those are the eclipses and visible planets. Once again, I said, put the moon and a couple of planets over some mountains. Cool image. So these are the visible planets. So Venus, so this is just, I kind of looked and this was in solar fire and I could see when the planets are visible and when they weren't. So Venus in the western sky, March, I'm not going to go reading through this. People can all look at this. Venus is March in the pre-dawn sky. Now, Venus and Mars are right next to the sun right now. So we're not going to see them for a while because they're traveling with the sun, right? So if their planets are right next to the sun, you can't see them. So that's why we're not going to see Mars for a while. Jupiter's the evening sky, and then we'll see in the pre-dawn sky, and then Saturn in the evening, pre-dawn, and then once again in the evening. And of course, you can see in solar fire, you can see, in your astrology is like here, if the sun is over here, at the eastern horizon, and you can see these are the planets that are in the pre-dawn sky. The sun over here is in the western horizon. You can see this is in, these are the planets that are in the night. So anyway, you can see it with the chart. Okay, we good? All right, ingresses. So once again, I said, create an image of the solar system. And wonderful co-pilot, I call her Coco, I love her. And she says, would you like me to put in a spaceship? I said, sure. So yeah, so I said, make it fun and colorful. Would you like me to include a spaceship? Sure. So here's this cute little spaceship in the solar system. So at any rate, yeah. Okay, so ingresses, when a planet goes into a new sign. And these are all the outer planets. So Pluto's, all the outer planets are going to make an ingress, move into a new sign, except for Pluto. Pluto just did it last year. So Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. All the outer planets are going into a new sign. And these are the dates that it's happening. Neptune entered Aries, end of January. Saturn enters Aries on Valentine's Day. Yeah. February 14th. Uranus enters Gemini, April 25th. Jupiter enters Leo in June 30th. And then after that, it's going to be opposing Pluto. All right. So those are the ingresses. And really a big deal that all the outer planets are making an ingress in the same year. Really, really big deal. I'm not sure how often that happens, but it's very, very rare. So, any rate, yeah. Okay. The past. So once again, it was like, create an image of a woman looking in the past. So Uranus and Taurus was chaos. And I don't think Uranus likes Taurus. Uranus wants to like, hey, let's be free. And Taurus is like, no, I don't want to. So they're kind of in conflict with each other, I think. Neptune and Pisces, of course, Neptune is associated with Pisces. And so it's the pandemic and confusion and kind of healing. And Saturn in Pisces, of course, is confusion too. So the Neptune and Saturn in Pisces, Uranus and Taurus. So water and earth. And what is water and earth is mud, right? Water and earth is mud. So we're coming out of mud. We're coming out of sludge, Yeah, muddy sludge. To the future. I was like, put her in the future to where she's happy. I was like, oh, look at now. If you notice, it's the same, it's the same, castle or whatever is in the background, but she's like, oh yeah. So Uranus and Gemini, outspoken voice. Everyone's going to be stronger. We're going to be louder. We're going to, like, Uranus is revolution and Gemini is like talking. So people are going to be, they're not going to be held down at all. Of course, AI is part of that, Uranus and Gemini, new inventions. It's going to be there for a number of years. Neptune and Aries, advanced healing. If Neptune is the healer, Aries is like doing something in the future. Now I'm seeing like little AI, little nano things that they can put in the body and then clean things out, So I'm loving that. Saturn and Aries, changing structure. Saturn is business, Saturn is structure, and Aries is like, we got to do something new. So that's with Neptune and Aries and Saturn and Aries moving forward. So we have a year of, I'm calling it a year of empowerment. A year of empowerment, because it's total turning point that's happening. We're coming out of sludge, muddy sludge, into fire. Into fire and Gemini and outspokenness. So everybody's going to wake up. It's like we've been in a deep sleep and we're all going to wake up. Okay. There we go, dear. Yep. Yeah. So that's pretty much what's happening in 2026. Yeah. So any questions? Anybody? Where? Yes. No. Yeah.
So with the future part,
You said there's change, there's looking, I guess, towards structures that are more positive. Yeah, exactly, that part, thank you. I feel like the outspokenness is what we're experiencing now. The changing of the structures is going to have to me, destruction of maybe the status quo and what's not working. So how does that figure in? I mean, I feel like there's going to be a lot of...
It hasn't started yet, dear.
Or maybe it is starting.
No, it's just we're just in the orb of it. We're just picking up. But believe me, it's going to be like this. We're like baby like this. It's going to go like that.
Okay.
So it hasn't even begun yet.
Wow.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to get a lot faster, louder, harder, quicker. Is there any questions from my Zoomies? Hi guys. Any questions from you? You, Mike? Yeah.
It's not actually a question, it's just a comment. And thank you for positive spin on so many things, because things have been not so positive in the world. So thank you for that perspective.
Thank you so much. I've got Jupiter rising. I can't do it any other way. I mean, I can't, so, but luckily you can see, look at where we're headed. We've gone from this, that's pretty sad looking, to wow, look, yes. So thank you so much for that comment. Yeah, because my feeling is that, it's all part of kind of quantum world too. If we all know that a positive thing is going to happen and we all focus on it, that's going to be happening. If we're like at fear, I'm not going to do fear. I'm not, no, I'm not going to do it, because we're the ones that are in charge of our lives, and collectively, you can see changes happening. Goosebumps on that. So there's a change happening, and we're part of the collective and the part of the change. But none of this has happened yet. The signs haven't changed yet. I mean, the Noon's nodes haven't changed. We haven't. The fire horse isn't here yet. None of the Aries isn't here. What I'm saying is buckle up, because we're going fast. Right. Yeah. So none of it's happened yet. Yes.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention, let's see, it was Sue Minahan mentioned that Frank Clifford, who's a very well-known astrologer, bought the Mountain Astrologer, and he published 2 online earlier ones, and now he's published the first edition, so it's come back, I guess. Yeah. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue. Sue, I want a couple things. I do Astro Jam with Sue. She puts on an amazing thing called Astro Jam, and Talk Cosmos, and she does and with Sean Kelly, and some of the astrologers that we've invited over here are amazing. So she has a radio show. She's done an incredible job. And Sue, thank you so much for coming here. This was great.
Oh,
yeah. So I want to.
Thank you. It's a treat.
You want to say anything? You want to say
No,
something?
well, I was just amazingly, that individual and I must have come from the same class down in Australia, I think it was, that was about asteroids, and which have been coming up quite a bit. No, I love everything you've said, and it just reminds me so much. Once I spoke with Eric Myers, and he was saying of a renaissance, like you're saying, it's between 24 and 29, and a renaissance that makes me, having thought about that, or maybe he said it, who knows now, but that, or maybe, okay, I'm going to just try to say it this way. When times are bad, there's a lot of creativity. It reminds me of the pubs or something. People go to the pubs, but people mingle and people create. And so just your thoughts about all the creativity. If I may, yeah.
Thanks so much, Sue.
Yeah, I don't know
Sue's an awesome astrologer, and she pulls together some wonderful things. So thank you so much for being here, dear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? We good? Okay. All right. Welcome. Bye, everybody. It was fun. See ya.
Okay. I don't use AI. I just borrow pictures from other people's emails. Okay, what's up in 2026? Buckminster Fuller said, in order to change an existing paradigm, you do not struggle to try and change the problematic model. You create a new model and make the old one obsolete. That, in essence, is the higher service to which we are all being called. Okay, another quote we might find appropriate. I stole this from the Sun magazine. I love the Sun magazine, the Sunbeams and the Sun magazine. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf. And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. Okay, ready? How the planets are related to each other at any given time does not vary from one system to the other. We had a Vedic speaker last month, and of course the planets are in different signs in Vedic astrology. But here, if you just look at the relationships between the planets, it doesn't matter what system you're using. Just look at the degrees between the planets. So if we're in 2026, we have Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto in similar degrees of the zodiac. They form a trine between Pluto and Uranus and sextiles between Pluto to Neptune, Saturn to Uranus. They are energetically connected in a certain way that is productive and flowing. That does not imply good or bad, positive or negative. Depends on who's using the energy, right? Jupiter moving into Leo beginning of July adds more energy to this. These are the cycles that are repeating this year. Venus, Mars in the underworld. In shamanic astrology, we think of them being in the underworld. They're off the stage. This cycle where Venus and Mars meet in Capricorn in the underworld reoccurs every 32 years. Saturn conjunct Neptune every 35 to 36 years. Chiron conjunct Eris. Now that wasn't one of in Susie's, but it's really very, very prominent this year. Chiron, Aries, Eris, and Aries every 53 to 54 years. Of course, Susie already talked about the lunar nodes going from Pisces, Virgo to Aquarius, Leo. This happens every 18.5 years. Jupiter moves into Leo. Jupiter cycle is a 12-year cycle and a few months. We can speak of them repeating over many years, but they never repeat in exactly the same way. They rhyme. And we can see how things that were developed under a similar cycle previously are now developing. Did anybody see that series on PBS, Ken Burns, The American Revolution? Anybody watch that? Yeah. I was really struck by how long it took people to get so fed up with what was happening that they revolted. They revolted for many different reasons, but it took a long time. I did note that Saturn and Neptune met just 2 years before the actual first shots were fired in Lexington and Concord. But people got fed up at the lack of representation. And they didn't like being restricted by the king. The king made this boundary. So people weren't supposed to settle in Western Virginia or over the Appalachian Hills. They weren't. The king was going to let the Indians keep that territory, and the farmers, the colonists, they didn't like that idea, and that gave them another reason to revolt. Oh, and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were selling the land to those farmers, and they weren't obeying the king either. So there was some reasons, a number of reasons that they revolted. And it was interesting to see that Saturn Neptune just 2 years before the first shots were fired. My friend took this nice picture, and you can go out in the night sky and see this. It's very prominent. So here you have Jupiter is right below that full moon. She took it in the full moon that just passed the full moon in Gemini when it was in Cancer. But Jupiter's right below the moon. And those two prominent stars that are up there above Jupiter are the stars in the twins, the constellation of the twins, Gemini twins. In shamanic astrology, we call it by the name. There's that great confusion between zodiacal signs and constellations, but there, Jupiter, you can watch Jupiter. It's going to retrograde back right into the middle of those two stars, Castor and Pollux, Pollux and Castor, depending on which way you're reading. Okay, so so watch it over the next few months. And I'm starting with the December solstice because just 2 days before this, that 3-1 Atlas that you might think of as seeding our solar system. It's bringing all this plasma and stuff into our solar system. And as it got close to the sun, it started releasing some of that stuff. It heated up, released it. So I think that it's bringing something into our solar system from outer space. and it pulses every, and I can go on to the next slide. This is a slide that picture Guy Otwell, who's an astronomer. He pictured this. You can see where 3-1 Atlas is crossing through our solar system. And its closest point is to the Earth 2 days before the December solstice, 1 day before the new moon. They called it the Thanksgiving invader. It's the comet's designation. I thought, for those who don't understand, Atlas means it was found by a team operating the Asteroidal Terrestrial Impact Last Alert Systems Robotic Telescope. Okay, that's where Atlas comes. And 3I means that it is the third known interstellar object. It's not something that from this solar system in a long orbit like other comets. It's something that's come from the outside. Okay. Now this I got from Sayer G, along with that picture at the beginning of the slides. And his dad, who is a scientist, had sent him this. It's really gaining the attention of a whole lot of people. It turns out it's entirely natural. The episode forces a deeper question. How do we distinguish between mere numbers, number patterns, and genuine signatures of selection? Teleology, an interesting word, or intelligence in the cosmos. And teleology, philosophy, the explanation of a phenomena in terms of the purpose they serve rather than the cause by which they arise. And theology, the doctrine of design and purpose in the material world. To me, my attention, really gets my attention because last year, remember, I talked about the Yuga shift. And in that book, he describes as this being a period now, we're entering into this period where we're going to experience, the Earth is going to experience more and more visitors into the solar system by beings that haven't been around here for a long time. Maybe they were here before previous ending and beginning of other ages. But we're going to start seeing more visitors. And maybe they're not in extraterrestrial, not being sent by some aliens. But when you think about the term of extraterrestrial, and you think about that being other than the Earth, from the Earth at which we stand on, and well, we have lots of people on this planet who are tuning in to messages from beyond. And that's kind of extraterrestrial. Anyway. So let me go back just a second to that December solstice. And so here we are. That's at this one that we used to think of as the beginning of the year, that darkest time when the sun, the shortest day, longest night, and we're waiting for the sun to rise, and it does after 3 days. So it's a really magical time, celebrated around the world. And we have that sun and Mars conjunct in Capricorn. We have the moon in the 12th house opposed by Jupiter. Jupiter is a player for months. It really is that one planet out there that's contrasted in opposition or trine or opposing, but that Jupiter, the planet of expansion. What's it expanding? I think of in this chart, the public anxiety over employment and health issues, and is definitely what's up right now. Here we have the new year. Okay, world around, we celebrate this as being the first day of the new year. So that's why it's really significant. We are seeing a couple of things that weren't in Susie's, but Chiron and Eris are there. Talk more about that later. Oops, sorry. And I think a lot about the Ceres, the goddess of the grain, the goddess, mother goddess, right there on the descendant, very prominent, and in an aspect to Venus in Capricorn. But the Ceres to me is talking about speaking to the grief, certain all this information about children and what's been done to the children, and what we need to be aware of relative to children, and also about farmers and what's happening with our food source. I place important, so their series on the descendant. To me, that's a very important part of what we're going to have to work on in this 2026. Of course, we've got this, I don't know how to get rid of that little, if you have any interest, the little bar there, not sharing, but Mercury right there in Sag, conjunct the galactic center, you might say, and square to Neptune and Saturn, the big players, Neptune and Saturn this year. But, you think about all we come into this new year with a lot of stories and myths, and what are we hearing, and what do we get from all the different sources that try to tell us this or that. We have to continue weeding out, and figuring out what's the truth, and so Mercury coming from galactic center, can we tune into those spiritual impulses that are coming to us from the galactic center to help us discern what is true or not. This is I always got to put up a map, and we can make of it what you want to, but this map shows that those lines of the Venus, Mars, they're going right through the East Coast, up through Philadelphia and Washington. We have, I put in a couple what are called parans, these crossings of these planets, the moon on the midheaven and the north node. Where they cross, you can think of that energy as affecting the world at that latitude. And we'll have another map in a second. But that the idea of the people's emotions, we're meeting with the North Node. How can we take care of people? Where there's a lot of unrest and grief over the fact of what's happening with immigrants or so forth. So I thought it was interesting that it's running through New Mexico, Phoenix. By the time it gets to LA, it intersects Uranus, Uranus on the midheaven, and we certainly have been getting a lot of shocks. I mean, there was rocking and rolling in California over there in the LA area. I hear a lot of tremors and stuff. So I'm looking at that. That's an interesting thing. And then the upper one, the upper Paran is with Mercury and Neptune. And again, we're you've got, of course, a lot of storms, but that's running through Indianapolis. We've been hearing about, people that are in Indiana, wanting to stick to their principles, to their beliefs, and talking about it and bringing that forward. We believe in the principles of the Constitution, so things like that. It's so interesting that line meets there below Chicago, but it's really strong above Indianapolis and running through there. And in the next map, you can see these parans, that Mercury, Neptune, running through places like Italy and Greece and Spain. But the one I thought was interesting was that moon and north node running through Iran. And there again, we have some the goddesses intersecting there, the goddesses of the palace and Vesta. There's a really strong feminine energy in Iran that wants to speak up and see change. We could talk about each one of these things for ages, and I'm sure if there's anybody who'd like to speak up and say anything, please do. Okay, so here is the new year. I've placed most of the charts in Washington because that really, what's happening in Washington really affects us a lot. And so in this, here's the New Year chart on the outside. As soon as I touch this, I'm sorry, and the US chart on the inside, and we can see that there's all this, the sun. I am sorry about touching it's very touchy, my stick pad. Anyway, you can see the energy of the Venus, Sun, Mars in the underworld opposing the natal Sun, Jupiter of the United States. Now we get talk about another way of looking at the Venus and Mars in the underworld saga. Venus and Mars meet in the underworld every 6 years. I mean, there's 3 different sagas. This is shamanic astrology, where, in one saga they travel in the morning sky together, or another one in the evening sky. But here they're in the underworld, and this saga began with an acronyal rise of Mars in Cancer on January 15. That's when Mars opposes the sun. It's the brightest. It's in its retrograde. It opposes the sun. It's brilliant. It gets your attention. That's the acronycal rise of Mars. That's when we think that's the cycle of Mars begins in Mars in Cancer on January 15th of 2025. And Venus in the rose as the morning star goddess on March 28th. With this overstory of Pisces. So Venus in the morning sky and Mars in the evening, and slowly they end up in the same place in the underworld. We can look back at previous cycles to get a feeling for this. Daniel Gimario writes about this in his Wizard Weekly. You can find that on the turningoftheages.com website. And he particularly looks at the time frame from October to April of these years. Like if we go back several cycles, January 1, 1930, what happens? The stock market crash and start of Great Depression. Pluto discovered. Herbert Hoover is president of the United States. Julita Seamus wrote about this in the Time Lords magazine that the Cosmic Intelligence Agency writes, and she added to this, atomic breakthroughs began, the rise of fascism, political extremism, economic collapse, strongman politics, leading to eventually to war. That is part of this time, this era, starting with this underworld saga. And January 1st of 1962 is the next time they met. And you got the developments of the space program, the space race, the Cuban Missile Crisis events, Kennedy's US president. There was the Aquarian eclipse and massive Aquarian stellium. And we all thought it was the dawn of the age of Aquarius. Just another thought about, it must be time for the age of Aquarius. Yeah. There were early stages of nuclear escalation and the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviet Union conducted 78 nuclear tests in 1962, began in February of that year. Nelson Mandela was jailed that year. And the US escalation in Vietnam happened. Then we get to 94 was the last time they met in the underworld, and we had the first Iraq war events. Clinton becomes president, birth of the European Union, strategic arms reduction treaty. Well, at first, in January of that year, Yeltsin from Russia and Clinton's signed in this Kremlin Accords, which where they agreed to stop targeting each other with those nuclear warheads. And then we get the START treaty, which was the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, that had actually been signed in July of 1991, but they entered into in force in December 5th of 94. So they're working on that. Chemical weapons treaties, the largest cyclone on record so far, the World Trade Center bombing, Rwandan genocide. I'm sure there's lots of good things that happen, but these things, big, momentous things that affected us. But guess what? Nelson Mandela that year in 94, May 10, was inaugurated president of South Africa. So what happened? He was jailed in the previous cycle, and he was made president in this one. There's a few charts that you might note for this conjunction in 2026. The Ukraine independence chart had 16 Capricorn rising. That's 16 degrees, 16 to 19 degrees of the cardinal signs is really front and center. Russia's invasion of Ukraine started, also has 16 degrees Capricorn rising. And of course, it's opposite the sun at 13 Cancer of US chart. She talks about fusion, not fission, but fusion. This is such a hot Mars, Venus, sun point of our era. So the cauldron is burning at maximum heat, dissolving old patterns we've relied upon as societies, now attempting to navigate a new world shaped also by major outer planet shifts. Daniel talked about it. Is this our time to compost the Kali Yuga, materialism, including the necessity and naturalness of grieving, that global humanity will not be going back to how it was before? Out of grieving comes new life and beauty and art. He wrote this when there was a beautiful grand water trine from Scorpio to Pisces, divine providence, grace and mercy, and Jupiter, they're all this grand water trine. I love that trine that we had. I was out in my garden and I decided that day I needed to get this Bermuda grass. And I was pulling on the Bermuda grass, trying to get it out of there. Do you know what? That Bermuda grass has grown such roots. This is in a raised bed that I have. And as I was trying to pull the Bermuda grass, the whole bed was coming up with it. A whole bed of soil was coming up with it. And it made me think about this underworld expression of Venus and Mars in the underworld, and how so much goes on under the ground, in the underworld that we can't see. We can't see so much. It's a fertile loam. It's a really fertile loam. It hides all the resources that are so coveted by the current big owners of the world, right? Those resources, the mines or whatever. But it just look at that connection, how the roots. But it's also we can also think about the mycelial mat in the forest that connects with everything. And that's why we don't want to build so many roads. We don't stop making roads in the forest, because it disrupts that connection, that vital connection that is made in the mycelium, in the mycelial mat. Yeah. Okay, so we get to the full moon. They are the Venus at 12, Sun at 13, Mars at 14, opposing that full moon, opposing the moon conjunct coming up to Jupiter. Strong push-pull. I mean, values and what the government might, the money that's held by the big government entities, or more than that. It's just that eighth house speaking, of some. And then just a few days later, there's the Venus conjunct the Mars, exactly opposing Jupiter. And when you have those it's two sides of the same coin. I mean, Jupiter's expanding something, and there's all this stuff in Capricorn, big business, and also, I mean, when you think of the story about Venus in the underworld journey, her journey to the underworld, it was to mourn the death of her uncle, the Bull King, and it was a myth about that time as they were going from the age of Taurus to the age of Aries, and so somehow that's kind of working its way into my thinking here. I haven't figured out quite how to put it all together, but I'm throwing that out there for you. Again, like Daniel said, the end of an age, we're grieving the end of an age. We'd like it to go back to the way it was. That's what he said in that series about the American Revolution. The colonists, some of them, especially those loyalists, they wanted it to go back to the way it was. They really liked being taken care of by the king, or the people wanted to go back, but they couldn't. They were marching into a new age. Here we go. And here's that. Okay, everybody, get out, watch the sunrise on January 9, just to participate in it. Just participate in it. It's because as the sun rises, Mars will be on one side, Venus on the other. You won't be able to see them, but you can get a sense of that energy. Jupiter's going down, sun is coming up. I'm really an experiential astrologer. That's why I liked shamanic astrology so much, to go out and experience these energies on the land with the sky. Anybody who has got any planets, angles around 19, anywhere, you're going to feel something about it. But okay, Paul's raised his hand. I'll let him speak. Yeah. Paul has a question.
No, that's my solar return chart. That's my son's 1950 cap.
All I can say is experience it. Pay attention. Pay attention. Spirit is trying to speak to us. It's to us to go inside and listen to see what we're being called to do. That's what is up for all of us to do, to really go into that, to pay attention, to listen as to what our guides are asking us to do. These trines will make it easy just to, just take it easy. Trine energy, things are going by so fast, you just kind of sit and watch the tide go by and the river flow. But no, we're being asked to participate and create something of our, create that new world Bucky Fuller talked about. We're each being called to do something. Okay, so where's that new moon? Where's this energy? We can't miss the world map. These red lines. They're going through. They're going through that part of Russia. Yes, Frank.
Which chart is this an astrocartography of?
This was of the Mars, Venus that I was just showing. There is a circle chart. Well, if you put it on the map of the world, there's a couple of places where those lines really are really directly over, and it could be impactful. I mean, there's going through it. Western Africa up through London. Like I said, through the peninsula, Russian peninsula. But the ascendant, descendant, of course, the ascendant lines were these Mars, Sun, Venus goes right through Washington, and then the descendant goes right through Russia. So just observation. This is a picture that Julie Giles added to her article. So you can see that Mars, Venus, Mercury, all on one side of the sun and the Earth on the other, where Jupiter is. I mean, you can think of Jupiter. Where we put the sun in any chart, think of the Earth as being on the other side. So we've got this tremendous pull on the Earth. You've got those planets on the other side of the sun. You've got Jupiter on the other side of the Earth. And interestingly, if you look at the declinations, not only is Mars and Venus and the sun in the same declination, by that means south, south of the equator is that southern declination. And we got Pluto and Mercury there too. So really strong dynamic pull, weight, heavy weight. The heavy weights are over there. Pluto and definitely adding to the underworld feeling. Okay, so moving on to that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I'll talk to you after this, and you can tell me if you have any thoughts about that underworld expression. So, Saturn-Neptune conjunction, reality, and like this quote, another quote from the Sun magazine, reality is the leading cause of stress among those in touch with it. I thought that was really appropriate for reality being Saturn. And those of us who lose touch with it because we're more Neptunian. We'd like to lose touch with it. We don't want to deal with this reality. But anyway, 36 year cycle, usually lasts about 8 months. We got a little sampling of this one last summer. And coming into that exact one on February 20th this coming year. Now, I did go back and I looked for any other, should be 0 Aries. I don't know why I put 1 Aries. Forgive me. February 20th, it will be 0 Aries 42. You don't see your mistakes until you're looking at them. Where's my editor? Now, I had to stick this in here. It just, we get this slanted news. We get these stories from mainstream media. And we have to kind of take them with a grain of salt, because then you see all the ads that are putting that mainstream media on the TV, and they're all about pharmaceuticals or come on. My computer just decided to do something here. I'm going to get this off the screen.
Yeah, it's not showing up on Zoom, but yeah. Get rid of that screen.
Am I going to get rid of it? Go away. So keep that in mind. We're getting barraged with tons of stories all the time, and that's that Neptune and Jupiter trine it, and Neptune and Pisces. We're starting to realize how we've been programmed since we were kids. I mean, programmed by our culture or our family or by school or by, all this has wanted us to think. Yes.
When I was in LA and at one of their meetings, the Visual Music Alliance, they used to call TV Televalium.
Of course, a lot of people avoid it because they don't want to get upset. The reality is what stresses us out, or something. But when you look at the fact that all the ads that bring you the news are by pharmaceutical companies, who wants me to think what? Okay. So they're in Aries. This is the Aries Mystery School. This is from the Shamanic Astrology Divination Manual and the handbook. So Aries, fire, masculine, evolutionary, actional, non-relational, characterized by action, competition, doing, nobility of purpose, honor, righteousness, and valor. We get the themes of the Kshatriya that protected the priesthood, the samurai in service to the lord or master, soldiers and warriors and generals and quarterbacks. And the spiritual path was at the householder, the warrior protector, commitment as the foundation for true freedom, the commitment to make a safe space for the family. Now, the shadow expression is fighting for the sake of fighting, extreme self-absorption, no empathy or compassion, and ruthless black and white fundamentalism. So I kind of think about, where these stories are taking us, what the stories are prompting, the Neptune stories, the myths, the stories, what are prompting Saturn to action. Saturn wants to protect the family. What and people are hearing all kinds of different stories, and so we can only understand and have compassion for the fact that people will be rather thinking it's somebody else's fault and I'm going to go fight them or something. So we can catch ourselves, before we go into that shadow expression. What do we want to stand on? The vernal equinox. This is another slide I had in my presentation from a couple of years ago. But you think about this equinox, this 0 point where spring begins. In Vedic, they've got it at early Pisces, because that's where it is in the constellation. You can go out tonight. You will be able to see it for a couple of months. Saturn is at this remarkable place in the sky that you can go out and look at tonight. I kept trying to look for a place where I could grab a picture of it. But if you go out tonight, you can see the 4 stars of the constellation of Pegasus. Modern Astronomy Union called it the baseball diamond. I still go with Pegasus, but those 4 stars are all you can really see of that constellation. And so you have the 4 stars up there, and right below it is Saturn. Saturn is very visible, and it will be for months until the sun gets into Pisces and later Pisces. But you can go out tonight. At this time of the night, it's right above us, a little bit to the right straight above. So, and you think about the star Shiat, which is in the constellation of Pegasus, and Ptolemy linked this star to Mars and Mercury, Robson to murder, and Browning, Eberton to great flow of mental creativity after the mortal accident, and Rigor, the astrologer, Rigor, to turbulence, and Brady to intellect and logic. So the Sabian symbol, you can think about this. A woman has risen out of the ocean. A seal is embracing her, leaving the past behind in order to emerge into a whole new era of existence and activity. And that was Linda Hill. And from Rudyard, keynote, emergence of new forms and the potentiality of consciousness. There's so much great potential. Well, these are the cards from the Saturn, Neptune. So I'm going to get that thing to go up. Okay, the cards for Saturn and Neptune. The card for Neptune invites us to be empty. That emptiness is the receptacle for all wisdom. Like the old koan about, the the guru invites the person for tea, and he puts an empty cup before the chela, and he starts pouring tea in. And it just keeps pouring and it's overflowing. And he says, this is you. There's no room for more. There's no room for more because you have to make the cup empty. You have to empty yourself in order to be able to accept new. Can we empty ourselves of all the expectations so we might receive messages from the dream time, great mystery that we're meant to embody, to create using the Saturn energy and natural law to put our visions into reality? Okay. It just froze me up. It froze. It probably says, okay, you've been talking long enough. That's it. Don't know. What? Oh, that was fast. I love this this is how they picture in the Vedic picture Saturn, Oshani, child of Surya, the sun. You who are the bearer of many jewel-like good qualities, remove our undesirables and bring us the desirable. Amen. I have that I have the list. Ken Johnson, was it? Kenneth. Yeah, he gave us a whole lecture. We can find that on those presentations if you want to learn more about how the different planets and the prayers and what they're doing. There's the conjunction. It looks a lot different. I'm sorry, from Susie. Susie keeps it simple so you can really see quickly what's going on. And but I've got all these goddesses. I've got there's the Ceres and the goddess of the grain, and Pallas Athena up there, who's the goddess, warrior goddess, and the most intelligent god. I mean, extremely intelligent goddess, and Vesta, and over here Juno opposing that Jupiter. So Juno was the classic. She was Jupiter's wife, that was imprisoned. We couldn't do anything. She was rather vindictive because of that. But there's Juno. But Tara Green calls her your genie. Also think of her as a genie. But this, I'm just bringing that up because this is in Washington. All that Aries energy in the 11th house, and you can think about. Anyway, I think about the 11th house emphasis. How are we getting along with our friends? How is our country getting along with our friends? Well, they say one thing and they do another, or, there's a lot of room for improvement. And organizations and all these organizations that want different things to happen, and like Bucky Fuller says, how can you improve a system that's so broken? I mean, really, we have to create a new one. But everybody's wanting some improvement here. We look at the next one. Here's the Saturn Neptune line. It's running right through Japan. There again, oh gosh, there we are. Japan's on the front and center. You can think of what happened, when Uranus went onto that Aries point the second time, and there was that big tsunami and earthquake, tsunami, and Fukushima thing happened. So let's pray that doesn't happen to them again. But that is where the line is running at this point. I could have shown others, but that one was the most dramatic. Okay, so previous Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. 1952, a high court rules Truman seizure of steel illegal. I wonder if we might hear something like that coming up. That was president who seizes, decides he's going to do this or that, and the high court rules it's illegal. There was a seizure of steel mills by Truman on April 8 after the companies had refused to give the workers the wage increase proposed by the Wage Stabilization Act. and he acted under his war powers. The Supreme Court decided he had exceeded his power. And in 1952, the polio vaccine was invented. Some vaccines, they're up for investigation. Okay, and new immigration quotas. They were struggling with immigration. Congress overrode a presidential veto and vetoed to restrict immigration into the United States, the most restrictive in American history to date. Only foreigners with technical training and high education would receive priority. What goes around comes around once more. 1953, the Korean armistice on July 22nd. So it ended the Korean War. 1989. Now hey, who all can remember 1989? I can. It changed my life. But it was on a strong point in my chart. It was on my IC. I mean, it was where it was really a potent force in my life. So think about where this current conjunction is in your chart. This could be a year that changes a lot of people in a lot of things. This energy is most prominent coming through the people that have this as a significant point in their charts. So in 1989, we had Tiananmen Square, violent crackdown. An earthquake strikes the San Francisco Bay Area. I had a friend who was driving when that happened over there in the East Bay. The proposal document for the World Wide Web is submitted. This is where it started. The Exxon Valdez oil tanker runs aground in Prince William Sound, causing a large oil spill. That's Neptune for you. Neptune oil. The United States invades Panama to depose Manuel Noriega. Could there be a kind of a rhyme to this current era? The fall of the Berlin Wall begins the downfall of communism in Eastern Europe and heralds German reunification. The Baltic Way led to independence of the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. So when I was listening to Georgia Stathis, she weighed in on this whole year, but I thought it was interesting about what she said about the Saturn Neptune. Saturn business aligns with Neptune, which is dissipation, needs change, structures are reorganized. And she thinks, she's threw out there that she thinks that their innovation will include all kinds of new filtration devices to help us clean up the environment or even our blood from plastics and pollution. I'm going with that. That'd be great. But, there's a lot of room for innovation. Now, the Chiron return. The Chiron return is a prominent theme that shows up every 50 years. And this time it just happens to be conjunct Eris, like it was back in 71. So Chiron represents our collective shadow for the US. Chiron has Chiron in Aries, and that fighting against the foreigners or so conjunct Eris instigates chaos. Well, okay. And so here it's exact in May of 2025, October of 2025, March of 2026. Previously, in 71, we saw the birth of the World Economic Forum, the WEF, and a previous global financial reset. Interestingly, it was also the birth of technocratic agent of chaos, Elon Musk, the guy who got out with a rich saw and decided, and what he was doing, he was consolidating all the information that the government had about every single person in this country. Okay, and so you can think of the central theme. Chaos is necessary for new creation, but is it natural or is it be intentional? Is someone intentionally creating chaos to get people on board because of fear or anxiety, or so that they'll listen and do what they want us to do. That's really important for us to stay true, stay grounded, stay true to our inner guide. But natural chaos is necessary for anything new or creative. Okay, I've got a lot of charts, and I'm thinking, we're getting along about 9 o'clock, and people are kind of, their eyes are closing. I'm a person that stays up till 11:30 most of the time. And so, just one other thing was that the Pisces new moon and the March equinox kind of bookends this conjunction. The Pisces new moon, Chiron's coming into that exact conjunction. Pisces new moon, really feeling all the grief of this, what's going on. And then you have the equinox. Then we can look at all that energy in the 11th house. As opposed to right here, the March equinox for Tucson, all the energy is in the 12th house. So you can think of that 11th house, labor unions, organizations. The collective is marshaling its forces. We gather together to fight what is happening or to create something new. The 11th house emphasis, Washington. How are we getting on with our friends? The 12th house is about service work, taking care of people, grief over the losses of our community and the ecosystem, thanks to that big border wall. But there's the different ways that we are experiencing this. The 11th house for Washington, the 12th house for here in Tucson. And we could, there's, like I said, there's a lot of charts. We could talk about those trines and sextiles. Boy, are they showing up. And you think about, if you have anything in your chart that's in those first early degrees, or any sign really, but especially in fire and air, you're going to be feeling these trines and sextiles. Sextiles, productive energy, really taking the energy and putting it to use. Trines, listened to Rick Levine, and he was talking about, the trines are just easy to go along with them. It's when we have a point in our chart that maybe squares one of these points, like the September equinox. That is really powerful in the Aries, all that Aries in the first house. Full moon. We just, throughout this year, we just keep having repeat of the emphasis of that energy. And this, so we get to the Venus rise on October 30th. And when Venus rises in the sky, when it gets 10 degrees, when it finishes retrograding in front of the sun and rises in the morning sky as the new morning star, Venus, it's the warrior goddess. And I think of Libra, that old idea of the fist in the velvet glove. They described Eisenhower that way. Well, I don't know. It just kind of stuck with me. But Venus, strong warrior goddess. Okay. There you go. Love is the only way to go. Love and Merry Christmas.
Yay.